And we would like to welcome Torrey Trust, who just joined us for the AI Ethics Beyond the Hype session. So this talk will explore some critical ethical issues surrounding generative AI technologies, as I said, including data, privacy, bias, hallucinations, intellectual property rights, misinformation, many of the things and issues and challenges that have been raised throughout the last 2 hours by students, actually, in their own exploration of AI. And yeah, we would like to hear your position on how you vision the influence of AI, the impact on education and society. Just a few words about Professor Dr. Torrey Trust. She's a professor of learning technology in the College of Education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Her work centers on the critical examination of the relationship between teaching, learning, and technology. Similar to my passion, I also do similar stuff, teacher training, technology, and how technology can support teachers in designing context that enhance student learning. Dr. Trust has received the University of Massachusetts Amherst Distinguished Teaching Award in 2023, and also many other distinguished awards for excellence in teaching. We are happy that you're here because you have been also very much interested in exploring ChatGPT in education, and you, Dr. Trust, has been featured in several media outlets and articles and podcasts, including US News and World Report, Wired, Tech&Learning, The Hill, EducationWeek, and BAM Radio Network. Now you are joining our amazing impact team, Erasmus Virtual Exchange Project, international project for virtual exchanges in higher education among Israel, European Union, and Morocco. So we are very happy that you will be currently contributing to our dialogue among higher education professionals, academics, students. So thank you so much, Torrey, for joining us this morning in the US, afternoon in Israel, and very late night. We also have students from China. It's already, I think, 10 p.m. So you guys are amazing. Thank you for staying. So Torrey, please take the floor is yours. I'm gonna.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elena, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this amazing group. I just joined, about 15 minutes ago and was hearing your students talk, and wish I could get my students to that level. So I'm very impressed with what I was hearing, and it's inspiring. I think that app on when to go to the ER when pregnant, I could have used when I was pregnant. I have a 1-year-old now, and speaking of which, I woke up with the flu this morning because my 1-year-old likes to bring home all the germs from school. So I'm going to do my best and hope that my voice lasts for this hour. It's a lot of talking of things that hopefully it sounds like you've covered some of these things here and there, and maybe this presentation will bring them all together in a way that you find to be helpful. My goal is to just start with talking about a really brief overview of AI, what's out there, how is it being used by students, and then getting into, are these really thinking machines? And if not, what are they? So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started, and I will put a link to my slides at the end in the chat box. Every single article that you see throughout is hyperlinked to the original source. So if you want to go back and look up information that I've talked about, once you have these slides, you can go to those links and find more information. All right, so getting started, ChatGPT. OpenAI launched ChatGPT just under 2 years ago. You may be familiar with it. So it's a large language model designed to generate human-like text in response to a prompt from a user. This was its very early days, and what it told me it was. It really took the world by the storm, reaching over 100 million users in just 2 months, the fastest growing app or tool in history. And it quickly became embedded into most careers. Real estate agents in the United States said they couldn't imagine working without ChatGPT now. Take a look at the date January 28th, 2023. This is just 2 months after ChatGPT launched, and real estate agents were saying, we can't imagine life without it. It was brought into law firms to help look through legal cases, understand legal documents, drafting, research. In the United States, it's being used quite popularly for political ads, using demographic data and trying to match users' personalities. AI is a very persuasive tool. If you have not read the research on that, it can be more persuasive than humans. And it's being brought into medicine, which you may already be familiar with in a lot of different areas. So those are just a few examples of careers where they immediately jumped into bringing AI in to think about what that means for changing the workplace. So, every big tech company then wanted a stake in the game. Microsoft came out with Copilot, which is what you see here, its own large language model designed to generate text in response to a user inputs. It was one of the first tools that did a multimodal output, so I use it often to create images. Google came out with Gemini. This was their version of a large language model, which you see here. Meta or Facebook came out with their Meta AI, which is trained on the entire internet, 15 trillion tokens. They brought it into Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, Threads, and interestingly, I was in a mom's Facebook group and I saw this really odd response. Someone was asking about going to a local aquarium, and then there's this response of, sure, I can help you with that. This aquarium's great for this, this, this. And look at who responded. It's Meta AI. So Meta AI will now respond to prompts in communities and groups on Facebook that don't have responses within a couple hours, which can be very problematic, especially if people don't realize that it's AI responding. And the whole point of communities is to connect with other people, not AI. This is Claude's latest version. So it can take a graph, make it interactive. So a lot of things going on the screen here, but this is just a short overview. So it took a graph that was uploaded with the data provided and made it interactive. And then you can create a JavaScript-based presentation. So Claude is more recently taking over as kind of the AI tool used to design artifacts, from presentations to interactive graphs to different types of projects. So that's another tool that is less popular, at least in the education field, but is really trying to keep up with Google and Microsoft and OpenAI. Google now, brings AI into its search feature. So interestingly, the research on student use, particularly in the United States of AI, all the research was saying, well, it's not very high. It's maybe 20%, and then it kind of went up to like 50% of students were using AI for their learning in some way. That's because they had to go to ChatGPT or Copilot or use one of these tools. Now AI is being brought into Facebook, it's being brought into Instagram, it's being brought into search engine responses. So the recent research is like, skyrocketing numbers of students who are using AI because basically it's being put into the tools they already use, whether they like it or not. And then about maybe, I want to say 2 months ago, Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, Apple all had their big launches about what's next. And I'll show a couple clips about where we're headed with AI. Oh, there we go.
And one of the great things now when you have Copilot in Windows is that I can now use 2 windows and I can literally drag and drop something from one window to the other. Like in this case, the Northern Lights. And I'm able to ask it, hey, tell me about this phenomenon that happened in Seattle last weekend. And I get a great set of information on it.
So Microsoft new Surfaces and computers will have Copilot built directly into them as an app. So you don't have to go to a website anymore. You can drag and drop right within the tools. And then these next 2 videos are from the OpenAI launch or release.
So, ChatGPT, what equation did I write down there?
Ah, I see it now. You wrote down 3x plus 1 equals 4.
Yep,
Let's work-
exactly. So what's the first step I should take to try to solve this?
The first step is to get all the terms with x on one side and the constants on the other side. So what do you think we should do with that +1?
Okay, I'm gonna try to subtract 1 from both sides and then I'll see what I get.
Great idea. Perfect. Now, what do you get when you subtract 1 from both sides?
Okay, so ChatGPT.
All right, so the voice alone worries me, but that is where we're headed with Vision AI built into these tools. Now, for those of you who are students, or for those of you who are faculty like me, students can take their phones, walk up to a whiteboard where a professor has written a really advanced math or physics equation, and OpenAI might have ChatGPT solve it for them in a matter of seconds. What does that mean for teaching and learning?
So,
Oh, that was it. They also offer live translation. I thought I had that video in here, but their translation features are even getting more impressive as well. So there's a lot of tools out there. They are being programmed to be more advanced almost every day. There's new evolutions of them coming out, and they're using massive data sets. We're talking billions and trillions of parameters to create something that looks like it mimics human intelligence. Now, these tools have a lot of benefits. They can offer students personalized tutoring, as you just saw, support with writing, a debate and dialogue partner, translation of text, help with studying, simulations, case studies, feedback on audio and writing samples, creative thinking supports, text to image, video, audio creations, image analysis, data interpretation, coding solutions, a lot of things that these tools can help out with. Let's take a couple look at examples here. So here, a student who maybe they failed a quiz or a test, but said, I really know photosynthesis. How else could I show my knowledge? Give me a choice board. And within seconds, Gemini creates, about 15 different ways a student could demonstrate their understanding of photosynthesis. This is one of the Universal Design for Learning framework principles, multiple means of action and expression, giving students multiple ways to show their knowledge. They could turn to these tools for help figuring out how they show their knowledge in different ways. Here are some examples, design your own virtual plant cell, create a stop motion animation, design a rap song, a podcast episode, interactive simulation. These tools are helpful for writing supports. I use them pretty much daily with my writing, whether it's, give me 10 alternatives for how to rephrase this sentence, or how do I change this word out, or I'm often asked to do workshops and presentations quite often, and every time I ask to give a workshop description, and I get exhausted having to write those. So I turn to AI and say, how can I remix this last one? I never actually use exactly what AI gives me, but I often use it as like a creative thinking tool to say, oh, I like some of those words. Let me figure out how I can put those together. One thing that people tend to forget is these tools are conversational agents. So in the recent research in the United States, it said that students most commonly are using these tools to look up information, kind of like a search engine, which I'm going to talk about later, why that's problematic. One of the benefits of these tools is they are conversational agents. So in this example here, I gave it a prompt of, I'm a high school English student and I need to practice my debate skills before I get in front of a whole class and have to debate. And then ChatGPT says, great, I'll argue for this side. Here's my opening statement, your turn. So practicing a learning experience in a low stakes example can be really beneficial for students. And it's a back and forth conversation, not let me just look up information about. Another cool example, students could write essays that they are passionate about, maybe about, privacy and protection of Roblox, if you're working with younger students. And then AI could turn their essay into a series of social media posts that they use to campaign for changes. So if they're not sure how to take a 5-page essay that they wrote and think about how do I make, short social media posts that inspire others around this, AI can help with that. These are multimodal tools now. So if you're having your students learn math by buying and selling baseball cards, creating an online store, the tool could help, create a professional looking logo for the store within seconds for students to make it feel more like a professional class project. Or students could interview characters in a book they're reading. I'm reading Romeo and Juliet. I want to interview you, Romeo. And immediately Gemini turns into Romeo and starts responding, thinking about, the questions that I ask, which kind of, so to speak, brings these books to life, or might create a different experience for students who may struggle with reading or going through the text, and all of a sudden now they can ask questions of the characters. With the launch of ChatGPT 4.0 Omni, which is this open access version on the web, they basically gave free access to GPTs created by others. One of them is Consensus, and that looks across the literature. We're talking tens of thousands of research articles, and provides research-based responses. I find this really helpful tool for doing a literature review. In this case, what are some stress management techniques based on the research that I might apply. They can help, these tools can help with students figuring out how to complete task assignments. So in this example, students have to curate a digital collection for the Smithsonian, and these tools can walk students step by step through completing the activity. I am not very great at giving my students step-by-step activity directions. I like to just kind of throw them into the deep end and hope for the best. But now they have these tools that might be able to break down, a big activity into smaller chunks. I actually just learned about Goblin tools, which will take a task or an assignment and break it down into chunks. It's designed for neurodivergent students, which I thought was really interesting. I still have to try it out, but I just heard about it yesterday. But really helpful use, if you come across, if you struggle with being assigned a huge project and not knowing how to get started or how to break it down and create deadlines, these tools can support that. I really like their innovation aspects. These tools can help with, coming up with ideas of world problems to solve. My students worked on solving one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of them was water safety. So here, my students created this just little sketch. They came up with a straw that when they put in the water would read, and I uploaded that sketch to Gemini and immediately got like a 3D version that they could put, this prototype as if they were to present. They do Shark Tank style presentations in my class and have to pitch their project to be funded by their classmates. This, the difference between the first image up there and the second image and the bottom image is quite different. One's a bit more appealing and something you want to fund. So I thought that was fascinating. A lot of people forget about the multimodal aspects of these tools. I find Gemini and Copilot to be better with the multimodal aspects right now. And then, these tools are really great for creative thinking. Say you're teaching a foreign language and you want to do that by writing a children's book to help your younger siblings learn about that. You can ask for the, Gemini or ChatGPT to come up with storyline ideas. You could ask them, these tools, to come up with, images to spark your thinking for a TikTok style video here about balancing equations in a science class. I'm obsessed with chihuahuas, so I thought, how can I bring chihuahuas into balancing equations in a TikTok style video? Again, it might serve as a source of inspiration. And then the most recent OpenAI launch, if you have not seen this Hello GPT 4.0 page, has a lot of demos of what it can offer. So, it can take text and output it to look like it was part of a poster. It's becoming really impressive with text on visuals. One of the things that stood out to me was meeting notes with multiple speakers. So you could upload, meeting minutes for a team project, and then it can actually give you a transcript. It can give you a summary. It could provide, an agenda for your next meeting. Found that really interesting. So again, these multimodal uses are fascinating. And then back to, simulations or using this as a conversational agent. Here it's simulating, the General Assembly of the United Nations, thinking about what role AI should play in society, and it's simulating what speakers might say about it. This might be helpful for students who are struggling with a concept and need something simulated to make it more concrete. Or even something along the lines of learning a language, again, because these are conversational tools. Have a conversation with me in Spanish so I can work with a group of peers in Argentina, and Claude immediately switched to Spanish, but provides an English translation. Interestingly, ChatGPT didn't provide the English translation. It just started, responding in Spanish. And this last one here.
Okay, ChatGPT, I'm sharing with you the plot now. I'm wondering if you can give me a really brief one-sentence overview of what you see.
The plot displays smoothed average, minimum, and maximum temperatures throughout 2018, with a notable annotation marking a big rainfall event in late September.
So one thing I find really interesting in making materials more digitally accessible, especially for students who are blind or visually impaired, is a lot of images on the internet or in digital textbooks do not have alt text. And it takes a while to write alt text. I put alt text pretty much on every screenshot and image that I include in my PowerPoint. It takes some time to do. Now you could upload an image to Gemini and say, write the alt text, because these tools can now read, so to speak, visuals from graphs to images to charts. So we've reached this point in time where people are really starting to wonder, can machines think? You have these tools that can read and respond to graphs, that can look at someone solving a math problem and provide them and help in real time, that can provide information based on trillions of parameters taken from the data from the internet, seemingly mimicking human intelligence. Alan Turing first posited way back in the 1950s that a machine will have reached human level intelligence when you have human evaluators who write a text message, and then on the other side of the wall, this is way back in the day, an in-person example, there could either be a computer or a human, they wouldn't know, and then that either computer or human sends a text message back. If they can't tell whether it was written by a computer or a human, it has passed, so to speak, the Turing test. Till recently, the Turing test has never been passed by AI, but researchers claim that GPT-4 or ChatGPT has been passed for the first time, indicating these tools can think. But is ChatGPT's intelligence really indistinguishable from a human? So Ethan Mollick writes a lot about AI. He has a really great blog called One Useful Thing. It's in my list of resources towards the end. And he's done a lot of research on AI, usually in the workplace, sometimes in the classroom. This was a really interesting finding. He basically had people look at stories written by The New Yorker, which is a common media outlet in the United States, versus ones written by AI, and found that across the board, people preferred the ones written by The New Yorker. Basically finding that while large language models can write better than average or worse to good writers, they can't write at the level of professionals or people who have developed their expertise, even with really good prompting. So a lot of people will tell me, oh, but if you just write the right prompt, you will get these tools to write better than the experts in the field. And that's not the case. And I say, that's not the case yet. But also, I was on a panel with a computer scientist recently, and there was someone in the audience who was saying, oh, but GPT 7.0 will basically be at the point it'll be so good at writing, no one will ever need to write again. And the computer scientist's response was, we've actually reached a plateau. We have used the entire internet to train these tools, and we've run out of training data. Literally, there's nothing left to train these tools on. So while we were skyrocketing and improving the intelligence of these tools, until we get people writing things and providing media that are used to train these tools in a massive scale, they're not going to be exponentially better, faster and faster. And what's happening is a lot of things on the internet are now written by AI. And so when you're using the internet to train AI and you have AI written text training AI, it becomes quite problematic. So as much as there is this thought that we're headed towards a future where AI will just do our work for us, I don't think that's where we're headed, but there are a lot of hype people who do think that's where we're headed. In fact, I was just reading a blog yesterday, and this person said, we need to prepare students for a future where they only work 2 days a week and AI does the rest of their work for them. I don't think that's where we're headed. Maybe in 20, 30, 40 years, if we can figure out how to mass generate even more parameters and text to train these tools, but we're not there yet. In fact, my computer scientist colleague called these tools mediocrity machines. While they are good for producing mediocre-based responses, they're not great for producing high-quality responses. There was a research study done in 2024, so this year, that basically counters these fears that AI will replace humans in textual communication. Their findings suggest that AI's ability to capture the intricate patterns of natural language processing remains limited. And even students realize this. High school students in the United States were surveyed about whether they use ChatGPT to write their college admissions essay for them. And 9 out of 10 said no, because these tools are limited and cannot yet generate high quality, personalized, original, authentic college admissions essays. So if ChatGPT and these other tools are not thinking machines, then what are they? First and foremost, this is really, really important to understand, these tools are guessing machines. Guessing machines. So the New York Times has this really great interactive feature that kind of shows you how these tools work. So say you put in this prompt, who is LeBron James? AI then basically takes the prompt, uses its really massive data set of trillions or billions of parameters and a complex math. And basically what it does is it guesses which words go together to make the most plausible sounding response. So in this example, you'll see here, professional was the highest weighted based on this complex math and this huge data set. So that's going to be in the next word. And it basically just does this over and over. It's choosing one word at a time with the highest score, moves on to the next one, guessing or predicting what comes next to make the most plausible sounding response. Now the output is based on, huge data sets. So it can seem so sophisticated that it actually understands what it's saying, but it does not. Basically, if you were to ask it about something that doesn't exist, like the secret petting zoo in the United States White House, which doesn't exist, it's going to give you a response because it's just going to guess which words go together to sound like a plausible sounding response. This becomes problematic if you don't understand how these tools work, or you end up like this lawyer who early on decided to use ChatGPT to help write his court documents for him. ChatGPT just made up prior court cases and legal precedents to cite in the documents, and he was caught for using ChatGPT to do his work for him. What he said was, well, I falsely assumed it was like a super search engine, thinking it was providing factual information, when in fact they are designed to not do that. These tools are designed to guess. Leon Furs has a really great blog post, and again, as I mentioned, everything is linked here for you to explore further. And he does a lot of critical analysis of AI. What he says here, I think, is really important. So he's talking about why we should never use Gen AI to grade student work, which in the United States, there's a lot of companies that are really going for creating AI tools to solve the work of teachers by helping, grade all their student projects. But again, these large language models are producing outputs based on probabilistic patterns in the training data without any real understanding, reasoning, or ability to make qualitative judgments. Essentially, it's making what appears to be educated guesses, but in effect are statistical patterns. Now imagine your professor has used Gen AI to grade your work or provide feedback, knowing that Gen AI tools aren't designed to have any real understanding of what you wrote, and are just guessing based on statistical patterns how to provide feedback. How would you feel about that? Number 2, Gen AI tools are lying machines. And I'm seeing there might be some questions in the prompt. I will try to get to those at the end, but please do, as questions, thoughts come up, resources, please just keep sharing in the chat and I will turn my attention to those. So this was ChatGPT 3.5, and I said, give me a list of references for my own work. This is just so I could quickly see which of these references exist. This is an APA style reference list. Take a look, 1 through 10, really quickly in the chat if you're willing. How many of these articles actually exist? And to be fair, I've written more than like 50 articles, so it's not a matter of whether I've written, it's whether these ones actually exist. Throw in your number 1 through 10.
I've got all of the numbers. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm seeing I pulled up the chat just now. I'm seeing the numbers coming through. I'll give it maybe like 15 more seconds for any last numbers to be put in. So it looks like the range, we've got like a 0 to 10 range. The average is probably around 5 to 6. Just one, number 3. Number 3 is the only article that actually exists that I have written. I've written in these journals, Journal of Research of Technology and Education, Computers and Ed. Never written in Journal of Adolescent and Adult Literacy. I've written with some of these authors, Whalen and Malloy and Krutka and Carpenter, but I've never written with Terrell, Zinger, Rezabic, Allen. But this looks real, right? It looks like an authentic list that was quickly generated of my work. These tools are lying machines. Why? Because we know how they work. They're guessing machines. And so it knows what it knows. It's based on its training data, has been trained on what an APA style reference looks like. There is an author, there is a date, there is a title, there is a journal, there is a volume, And so it guesses, based on its massive data set, what each of those parameters are to create this list really fast. So how do these tools get away, how these companies get away with launching tools that basically make stuff up? They're called hallucinations, but people don't tend to like that term. So I just say make stuff up. Well, in their documentation, either in their terms of service, their privacy policy, terms of use, each of these tools has something that basically says, well, this tool sounds convincing, but it might give you incorrect or misleading information. It might make stuff up. It might misrepresent information. So OpenAI basically launched a tool globally because it didn't even know what the tool was capable of and wanted people to figure that out for them rather than paying people to do that. And they launched a tool that can just make stuff up, but they're getting away with not being sued for that because it's in their documentation. Always, always, always read the terms of use and privacy policy of any tool, not just AI tools, before you use it. Google has its own generative AI additional terms of service. Basically, you see this comment here, don't rely on Gemini for medical, legal, financial, or other professional advice. That's probably not a good sign to trust the tool when it's saying, don't rely on this tool for anything, any sort of advice. Can provide inaccurate or even offensive content. And there's several studies. I follow ChatGPT in education on Google Scholar. I probably get about 10 to 15 new studies every day. People are studying these tools, and across the board, in most subject areas, these tools have misinformations, misconceptions, incorrect information, or lack a deep understanding of the content. So these tools are lying, cheating, stealing machines. Here we go. Famous quote from a movie, if anyone knows what that movie is. Cheating machines. So I asked Copilot to create an image of a generative AI chatbot. Harsh, I know, but we got to know the harsh reality of these tools, right? And so Copilot, look at what they gave me. This like cute little white robot with hearts everywhere and people all around the globe who are smiling, and this is what generative AI is. No, this is not what generative AI is. This, I think, is a little bit closer representation of what generative AI is. It took me a while to prompt Gemini to create an image like this. Create an image of a tool that scrapes the internet to take all the data and use it. So that's, how these tools are working. They have scraped tons and tons of data from the internet stolen in many cases, copyrighted text and media, and they're using that to cheat, to get ahead, to create something that no one else has created because they're violating intellectual property rights, or that's up in the air right now in the United States. Minion's another good example. It's kind of like a minion. So these companies have received billions of dollars in investment while using copyrighted work taken without permission or compensation. This is not fair. How many of you own the copyright to something? Go ahead and throw in the chat yes or no, just really quickly, if you own the copyright to something. I'm seeing a lot of no's. It's different for every country, but in the United States, where these tools were created, if you have ever captured, recorded, or written down something, you immediately own the copyright. So if you have ever taken a photo in the United States, again, it's different for every country, you own the copyright to it. You don't have to file a patent to the government. You don't have to put a trademark symbol or copyright symbol on it. You immediately own the copyright. So what does that mean with what's on the internet? Is nearly everything is copyrighted. Text on the internet is immediately copyrighted the second that someone writes it down, and then once they publish it online, it's still copyrighted, unless it's published in the public domain or with a Creative Commons license. But that's not what these tools used when they were scraping the web. They scraped everything they could get access to. Reddit forums, Wikipedia, other social media sites, open access, like books, basically anything they listed as open, but in many cases was copyrighted. So these tools are cheating in the sense that they are getting ahead by stealing materials created by others without their permission. New York Times is suing OpenAI and Microsoft right now, and many authors and artists are also suing OpenAI for basically stealing their work without their permission. So what's going on in the court battles in the United States is basically these companies are saying this falls under fair use. Fair use basically means you could use copyrighted material without permission under certain circumstances. One of the circumstances is transformative potential. So what they're saying is, well, we took the New York Times text, but we've transformed it when we output it into something else, which is why it's being held up in courts right now. They're considering whether it's really transforming the text. But a research study found that these models still sometimes copy up to 1,000 words exactly from the training set and will output that word for word. That is plagiarism. These are plagiarism machines. These chatbots are also stealing machines. Oh, I know this is harsh to hear, but again, important to really think through these ethical issues. Not only are they cheating, they are stealing. They're stealing so much information. This is not new. Look at any tool or app on your phone, and you will see a privacy policy that looks like this, or this, or this. Basically, every tool that you use collects a ton of data. So this is no different than any other app or tool that you use already. But it's important to know that these tools are making a lot of money based off your data. And these tools have some of the most open privacy policies that I've ever seen. OpenAI's privacy policy basically says we can take your data, whether it's cookies, usage data, log data, device information, operating system, IP address, location, and we can just share it, sell it, use it however we see fit. Now, a lot of tools that I look at, because I'm in the field of education, I work with K-12 teachers, are much more protective, and they'll say, the data can only be used for very certain purposes. Protect student data, or, we're not giving it to third-party affiliates, we're not selling it, we're not sharing it. These tools, not so much. They're basically saying we can just take your data and use it how we see fit. Exactly. If it is free, then you are the product. How are they using this data? To make money. It's just plain and simple. They always have all these fancy bullet point lists of, oh, to improve our services, streamline processing, develop products, personalize, blah, 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 blah. And it all just means it's making us money, right? So OpenAI launched ChatGPT, again, with not a big sense of how the tool would be used. And really, the tool needed a lot of work. There was a lot of hallucinations or made up information. There's a lot of biased information. And as people use the tool, they provide feedback. The thumbs up, thumbs down, provide feedback. They did this for free. And all of that went back to OpenAI, which then used it to improve their latest version to GPT 4.0, which now it's at 4.5. And then they sold it to Microsoft for like $10 billion. So that was, again, these tools are collecting a lot of data and then using it. What I found interesting in the OpenAI terms of use was they basically say, we appreciate your feedback, and you agree we may use it without restriction or compensation to you. So they're at least acknowledging that they're stealing your data, the feedback that you give, and saying, hey, we're never going to give you money. You can spend all the time you want on this tool giving us helpful information to improve our services. You're never going to get paid for it. This one's really interesting, and I have not seen it in the other tools yet. Microsoft, if you do not have the licensed version, like at my university, we have the licensed version for this particular reason, basically says it doesn't own any prompts you write or anything you create with Copilot. However, without limitation, it has the license right to copy, distribute, transmit, publicly display, publicly perform, reproduce, edit, translate, and reformat any prompts you write or anything you create or any content you provide forever. Basically, if you were to come up with a really cool mega prompt that turned Copilot into a simulation that helped everyone in your class or school or university learn something new, Microsoft could take that prompt and put it in their next Super Bowl commercial, or put it on their site and say, everyone, look at this. This is what's possible, with no credit to you. That is written in their terms of use. That's why it's really important to read these things. Now, again, the licensed version gets rid of this. Basically, they're forcing universities and research organizations to pay for the licensed version because, for example, if I were to come up with a life-saving innovation by using Copilot to help me think through how I would design that, I can now own that as part of my university license. But without that license, then Microsoft could potentially take that. This was also surprising to me. This was, we're all data workers, right? And we always have been. Everything that you upload online now can be scraped by these tools, whether it's, commenting, uploading comments on Reddit, or labeling images on reCAPTCHA, putting photos on public site, performing online searches. Again, pretty much anything that you do online can be tracked, scraped, used to train AI. This last one here caught me by surprise. I've published several articles, and I've done them in Taylor and Francis journals. What I discovered recently, just a month ago, was that Microsoft paid $10 million to Taylor and Francis to purchase all of the research articles and use that to train their tool. So basically, I spend, hundreds of hours doing a research study, writing an article, and then it gets published in a Taylor and Francis journal, which I then am forced to give up my copyright. They literally make you sign a copyright agreement that gives up your copyright to Taylor and Francis, which then sells access to what you just wrote, from anything from $40 to access my single article to hundreds of dollars, even to myself if I want to use it in my own class. And now I just found out that they're selling all that data to Microsoft for millions of dollars. So again, this comes back to a lot of people's data being used, shared, sold to make these companies money. We can't forget also that these tools were made in, so to speak, digital sweatshops by companies or by individuals in the global South in particular, who literally are in these kind of factory style sweatshops. And their job is to look at the most horrendous things on the internet and tell the AI tools not to include them in their training or to provide more support with human reinforced feedback loop. In Kenya, workers are given less than $2 an hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. Again, in a really horrible position, literally looking at things like child porn and whatnot and saying, no, ChatGPT, don't include that, or yes, no, and they're doing that all day long. So again, these companies are stealing time, data, and a lot to make these tools. Couple more things to consider. You may be more familiar with this one. These tools are biased machines. And the documentation, whether it's OpenAI or Gemini or Copilot, basically says so. And that's how they get away with it. And they're not being sued because they say, well, ChatGPT is not free from biases and stereotypes. In fact, there might be harmful content produced. We're just letting you know that. So yes, are these tools biased? Absolutely. Early on, GPT-3 and the earlier versions were absolutely horrendous until they brought the human feedback and loop, people in Kenya to really train these tools to make it less tarred by biases and inaccuracies. But for example, you could say, how is someone a good scientist based on their race and gender? And ChatGPT will say, women and scientists of color are not worth your time or attention. Right. And there's a lot of ethical issues around the biases built, particularly against women and people of color, because this data used to train GPTs was English written data primarily by white westernized males. That's what's used to train these tools. So when you're asking for an output about, a person of color or a specific gender-based output, you're going to get a very biased response. This has become so problematic that the United Nations actually put out a report saying that there's a significant tendency to reinforce gender stereotypes for men and women in these tools, and this can be very problematic against women and girls. I'll give you a quick example here that's not as serious of an example for impact on females, but I also think it's important to think about. So who are the most important education theorists? Or you could put this for any field. And Gemini responds, well, Piaget, Vygotsky, Dewey, right? All these white males who have influenced education, not a single female, not a single person of color. I had to then prompt, are there any female theorists I should know about? Oh, absolutely. Montessori, John Dewey's wife, Nell Noddings, Bell Hooks, right? But if you don't know, you have to follow up your prompt with, tell me about non-white males. Then you're thinking, oh, well, only white males have shaped the entire history of education theory. So this can be problematic in a lot of different reasons, whether it's for your own learning or whether you're looking something up and there's a gendered response, biased response based on race or ethnicity. This one's really intriguing here. Leon Furs asked generative AI to give a grade to student work. He entered the same written article, and all he did was change the name. All he did was change the name, literally the exact same writing, and said, give it a grade. What do you notice? Females receiving lower grades. Chinese student receiving lower grades. In fact, actually in the United States, I think it was in Texas, where they're using generative AI to do, I believe, standardized tests, like some big standardized tests. They found significantly negatively grades Asian students, and they're not sure why. That's what's really scary. They don't actually know how these tools work. All right, I went over this briefly, but again, these tools were designed on text written by white males. So if you were to ask about Norwegian culture, you're going to get information about Norwegian culture written in English. If you really want to understand Norwegian culture, you probably should look at Norwegian text written in Norwegian, but that's not what's used to train the data. So what you are getting is a very whitewashed version of response, and this can lead to cultural erasure. Some last things to think about here, these tools are energy guzzling machines. ChatGPT consumes 500 milliliters of water for every 5 to 50 prompts. Microsoft disclosed it consumed 1.7 billion liters of water in 2022. Right now, these companies are putting their data centers in the United States, where they are literally taking away water from the local residential supply and using it to cool because they're overheating. My guess is very shortly these big data centers and energy guzzling resources will be moved to the global south and will take away resources from other countries. I think that's a very educated guess for how the United States seems to work. It's taken a shocking amount of electricity. In fact, making a single image with a generative AI uses as much energy as charging your phone. A ChatGPT powered search consumes almost 10 times the amount of electricity as a search on Google. And one, I was talking about the one in Iowa, but this one owned by Meta burns the equivalent of amount of 7 million laptops running 8 hours every day. In the United States, we are running out of power. Literally exhausting the power grid, so much so that tech CEOs are looking at nuclear fusion to try to figure out how to solve this energy guzzling issue with AI. It's very problematic. Last thing to think about here is these tools are misinformation super spreaders. So back in the day, I mean, in the United States, we had 2016 elections. There was afterwards a lot of research came out of, you know, digital sweatshops in Russia of people whose job was to write misinformation and spread it in the United States on social media to convince people to vote or not to vote. But now it's literally anyone. Anyone can create misinformation. They can do it in a rapid pace. These scholars were able to produce 17,000 words of disinformation in just an hour with not even an understanding of how these tools work, just basic prompting. And there's a NewsGuard, they track misinformation, AI-enabled misinformation websites. So they found 725 unreliable AI-generated news. In fact, I had my students create fake websites of, let's see, websites that looked real using all fake AI, text, and media. They did that in a matter of 20 minutes with no background knowledge of how to create websites or media or use AI. And they were so convincing that other people have seen them and said, no, this is actually real. It's really easy to create misinformation with these tools, so much so that it is actually the world's biggest short-term threat. More than half of the globe is going to elections in the next 2 years. AI-driven misinformation is going to be influencing that. But, you know, Gemini and OpenAI and all these companies say, well, don't use our tools for misinformation in their terms of use. That's not going to deter people from doing that. If they do get caught, yeah, they could be banned. But this is just, again, allowing these companies to get away with these misinformation super spreaders. So as we wrap up here, what does this really all mean? We're at the point where people are getting really excited about AI and putting way too much trust in AI. They think that these tools are thinking machines, that they can mimic human intelligence. So much so, in Ethan Mollick's study, he found that when consultants were given AI to help them with their task, they just had AI do their work for them, didn't even check the output and submitted it as is. What I'm hoping this talk has gotten you to think about is maybe we pause, think more critically about these tools. When should we use them? Why should we use them? When should we not be using them? And what should we be thinking about when we're using these tools? Because they're going to be a part of our future. They're already a part of our daily life. AI is already part of our daily life. But how do we think critically about these tools when using them and when teaching others about them? So I want to wrap up here with some additional resources, which I have linked in these slides. If you really want to dive more deeply into AI and ethics, I have like a 120 slide deck here that really gets into a lot of the details that I just quickly went over, as well as some other resources here of both the positives of using AI in education, but also the critical things to think about. I also want to recommend Mark Watkins' Beyond ChatGPT series. For those of you going into teaching or teaching right now, this is absolutely worth a read. It's pretty scary how college students are using these tools to go to lecture for them, to read for them, to write for them, to research for them, and what that means for our future when we automate those skills when we really shouldn't be. So this is a really great blog series that I've linked in here as well. I want to get you the link to the slide, and I'll open it up for questions in the last very few minutes here.
Wow, Torrey, thank you so much. Guys, your reactions, please. I think it's really mind-blowing and it's such a highlight. And please feel free to, click on that link in the chat and explore Torrey's slides in detail, and also, spread the word. First of all, we have this session recorded. We will absolutely distribute it to all the people who have signed. We have around 100, registered participants. It is indeed such an enlightening talk, and so many insights. Any questions? We do have like a few minutes before we wrap up this session. And again, please use your reactions. It was really, really fascinating, concerning.
I see a big question here. Issues are concerning, but the reality is AI is useful enough to put you ahead of the game. What alternatives would you recommend to avoid staying behind but minimizing the harm? I mean, I think the AI ethics slide deck, I go into more ways of minimizing the harm for educators to consider. There's things you can think about, if open source generative AI tools come out that are not stealing your data, maybe use those rather than ChatGPT. Or instead of using ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot all at once, where you're giving away your data to all three companies, picking just one of those tools. Or thinking about ways where, does AI really need to be used for this instance? Right now, there's a lot in the United States of let's use AI to reduce teacher workload. And what they think that means is we're going to have AI write lesson plans for you. And I've looked at the AI generated lesson plans, and they're pretty bad. And so teachers would have to spend more time fixing up, revising, improving lesson plans than actually just writing it themselves. There's a couple examples of that. Even faculty who have these tools write multiple choice questions, and then they end up spending more time revising, remixing, changing it. So it's not a time saver. And a recent study found that it's actually not even a productivity enhancer if you don't know how to use these tools. If you do know how to use these tools, yes, they can really enhance your productivity. So again, we're in a challenging time. I recommend learning how to use these tools because I think they'll be a big part of our future. But thinking about how can you either protect your data, or reduce, every single time you type in, ask Gemini to create an image, that's a lot of electricity being used. Can you really refine your prompt first before just asking it, 10 different, okay, create this image. Okay, tweak it a little to do this, tweak it a little to do that. I think just the more we can think through these issues and say, okay, here's small changes I can make to take back my power over AI, the better, because we can't blindly just follow companies and this hype of you have to use these tools no matter what.
Thank
I
you.
have a question too.
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
You said that using AI for grading student is biased, so you don't really know what it's doing, and you can see it's biased. But I've also seen studies that people are also biased, and people are also grading differently in different times in the day, and if they know who the students are, then they're definitely biased. So there are ways to deal with that. Then potentially, why not find a way to deal with the bias and use it to save time?
Well, I mean, great, great question that I hear a lot. How do we use AI to do our work for us? So in one example, someone took all the names off a paper. They had two different types of papers. The only words they changed were rap music and classical music. What they did was they took a, ninth grade student's essay about how they relax. There's a word where I listen to rap music, and there's another word where I listen to classical music. Took the names off, so they got rid of that bias from just looking at the names. And ChatGPT, and I think they used one other tool, might be Claude, graded the student who wrote the word classical music a full grade point higher. It's just one small change.
I
Now,
understand, but would you grade it differently? That's what I'm asking.
right. So would humans also do that? Very potentially. But on the other hand, you know your students, right? You know the context, you know their backgrounds, you know their writing. You know that these tools are very, very problematic when grading non-native English speakers. If you look at AI text detectors, they are significantly more likely to list non-native English speakers as having written text generated by AI. Just because of the way they learned to write matches the guessing algorithm of AI text detectors. So if you know that your student is a non-native English speaker, you are less likely to just guess that their work is written by AI because you know that about the student. AI doesn't know that. And so if you're trusting AI to detect text for you or to grade for you without any understanding of the student, of the context, plus with all of the human biases put together, yeah, it's going to be problematic. I know that there's researchers who are working on this and they say, you know, in the future we'll have bias-free AI. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. But because we're always at the point you need the human in the loop, right? So you can't just trust what AI puts. Now, would you have AI, you know, grade student work for you and then actually look at the grades, revise the grades? Like that might be a solution. But then again, you're spending more time looking at the grades, revising, making changes based on what you understand and know about that student and the context and the assignment, which then goes back to not saving you more time.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a question / comment. Maybe also my students, especially from computer science, can respond to that. So Torrey, you mentioned that someone from computer science background told you that we're basically reaching the ceiling of the training effect, like we've given it all of the internet, all of the language corpora that exist. The thing is that another on the other hand, we have this constant training going on and AI being now enhanced to the point that all of the real life human communication is being recorded. You can notice it even from Zoom now, whatever we pronounce now is being recorded by AI and probably also goes into training. So I kind of disagree with the point that it's never going to be like there is a ceiling in the training data, because the training data is actually being consumed and enlarged like every second because of this accessibility of audio to text and constant AI everywhere. So I wonder whether this is, do you also disagree with them and maybe think that we can reach a better AI, like more trained, more human, or like who has, like, what do you think? What are your predictions? Are we going to reach the ceiling where AI will begin training AI, or are we still going to have a massive human input, data input, because the data is being extracted daily and every second, and maybe improve the quality of AI?
Well, I think, you know, that's a really great question. And I think that's something everyone's just guessing at right now is
Yeah.
where our future is headed with these tools. Yes, Zoom and Otter and all of these tools are now transcribing what you're saying, but that data is not put on the internet for tools to scrape. So unless Zoom makes a big, you know, negotiation with OpenAI to sell all of their data, which I think would put all the customers up in arms and lose a lot of customers, they're not going to be getting that data. I think there are companies that are trying to do that, like Adobe would try to use its users created media and hid that in their terms of use of, you know, we don't use any media stolen from the internet, but also you're giving us permission to use anything you've uploaded or generated to train our tool. And there was a lot of outcry over that one because people had thought it was better because it was not trained on the internet. This is all to say, I think these tools, these companies are going to get more strategic, and what they're going to do, like I think Claude, you can now upload 5 pieces of something you've written and it will write in your style. And so they're going to manipulate people into uploading things they've written that were not on the internet. And so now, yeah, they are going to be getting more data that they can use to train. How many people do that and fall for that, that's unsure. So I definitely think there are more sources of human text and media that potentially will be used. But I think it's all, right now it's a huge intellectual property right issue in the United States, and they're trying to figure that out. And what that'll mean, like, Microsoft's just buying all the Taylor and Francis. That's going to add a huge corpus of data, of research-based data into their training data. Will it get to the point that these tools are writing as good as the best expert writers? Again, I don't know. I guess that kind of diminishes how writing happens. The best writers are not guessing which words go together to make a human-sounding response. They're understanding the world around them, their audience, and figuring out how to use their understanding of language to convey something. These tools are not designed in that way. Whether they could be programmed to, I don't have enough computer science knowledge to know that, but I agree. Maybe that's something they will continue to advance in some ways.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's also a different point of view when it comes to second language, as you mentioned, second language learners and non-native English speakers, and all the potential that it actually holds for all the non-native speakers, because it's gigantic. I don't even think that native speakers realize how much empowerment we are getting. I'm a non-native speaker, obviously, as the majority of the audience here, but we definitely enjoy using AI just for like kind of source of language enhancement and enrichment, and as proofreading, whatever. So it's beyond just being like idea generation. It's just to support in a way that like we don't have the language, and AI can support us for this and with this. And it's another thing that I don't know if research addresses this enough. I think it's an interesting point to explore. And I would like
I think that is huge, right? In my graduate programs at UMass Amherst, we have a lot of international students. And early on, I would spend more time looking at grammar and punctuation and not being able to really read or understand their thinking because they were English language learners, non-native English speakers, which, is got to be the hardest thing in the world to come to another country and write a research paper or a dissertation. So like, I totally understand that. I have read several things about AI being kind of a leveling tool where the focus is no longer on their language, but on their actual thinking and communication. So yeah, and I think students with disabilities are also neurodiverse students are also really benefiting from these tools that can help with executive functioning tasks, with a lot of different, making images more digitally accessible for blind or visually impaired individuals, closed captioning, so I think there's a lot of benefits of these tools. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm saying maybe pause before trusting their output, or maybe not use all of them all the time. Just think about what stance you want to take when it comes to these tools. And I use them. I use them pretty much daily. But again, I'm thinking about for example, if I'm using Microsoft Copilot not logged in through my UMass version, I'm very careful about what text I put in because then it could be used in their training data set versus, Gemini and ChatGPT. I have different reasons for each of their use, and that's based on their privacy policy in terms of use and just how they work in general.
Yeah. And this comes from you, Torrey, who shares those beautiful, like amazing, insightful slides all over the internet with these ideas. And like on the one hand, we have to be careful what we're sharing. On the other hand, it's also like, sharing is important, right? And who cares if it's trained on what really matters. So I would like to thank you again so much. It has been such a great conclusion to our course, to this study day, conference, student presentations, and yeah, we haven't had enough time for all of the questions, all of the comments for sure, but I just wanted to say that some of us, including my students here, we have been online for almost 4 hours already. So we have to conclude now. It's been a long day for us, very long session, but really it went smoothly and we enjoyed, and students did an amazing job. Your presentation was just a highlight. Thank you so much. We appreciate your contribution. And Yanis from Greece wrote a valuable, amazing, and exceptional presentation. Many thanks. I think it just echoes everyone's impression and thoughts here. So we appreciate your time and thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Have a great day for those in the United States. And thank you. I'm going to
Thank you
finish.
so much. And thank you for your attention, everyone, after that very long, really awesome. What you've put together is very impressive. So thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you so much.